Thank you, Stephanie. Welcome, everyone. I'm glad to have all you there. So I'm also chairing the IMIA Sustainability Committee. This is a group of 8 people, and our goal is to raise awareness and develop guidance tools and develop some consideration in underwriting for the engineering insurance community. The topics of the day, we'll have 2 topics. One is more regarding social aspects of construction industry. This will be held by Wilhelm from Hannover. And the other topic will be about how to measure, manage and reduce CO2 emission on a very large project in Paris. And Sylvian Pollet and Bourdon from Société du Grand Paris, Société du Grand Projet, are there to present that for us. So this is all for me. So now it's Louis, please, if you want to share your screen and start presenting.
Yes, with pleasure. Thank you for the introduction, Isabel. Can you see already my screen? Or
yes.
I think I have to. I can't see. I have to do it again. Sorry. So.
It was all good.
Seconds. All right. Great. So for today, I've prepared a few slides about the relatively new topic of FPIC. FPIC is an abbreviation of free, prior, and informed consent. I will talk about this in a few minutes. Before, I would like to introduce myself very briefly. I'm Louis Wilhelm, and I've been working for Hannover since summer last year. Here at Hannover, I work as a dedicated ESG specialist in the facultative reinsurance division. That means on the one hand, I focus on tackling all the ESG related underwriting regulatory requirements, such as the common EU taxonomy, the new CSRD. And on the other hand, I think about how can we as Hannover how can we improve our own ESG approach and the facultative division. And I'm kind of sparring partner for our underwriters when it comes to ESG. And a few sentences about my time before Hannover. I've worked in the asset management of an insurance company. There I've worked on topics like Solvency II and especially sustainability. So how to integrate ESG aspects, sustainability aspects into investment decisions. So my background is in sustainability and finance. But back to our meeting right now, I'm really happy to speak with you about the social topic of ESG, in particular about the rights of indigenous peoples and the established abbreviation of FPIC, so free, prior, and informed consent. First, we see a disclaimer, and then, we will speak about FPIC in depth. But before, I would like to frame this topic a little bit. At first, let's take a look on the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm not sure if you know them. If not, I give you a short explanation about these Sustainable Development Goals. These ones are a global agenda with 17 goals that were adopted by the United Nations in 2015 to promote, a more sustainable development by 2030. These goals address big overarching challenges such as poverty, inequality, environmental degradation, and climate change. And these SDGs strive for a balance between economic growth, environmental protection, and social inclusion. And the intention of the United Nations is to have created a common framework about sustainability topics. And moreover, the United Nations call on all countries to work closely together and act for a more sustainable and fairer world. And if we take a closer look on these 17 Sustainable Development Goals, on the left side of the slide, we see that some SDGs, so SDGs is the abbreviation of Sustainable Development Goals, so some SDGs can be assigned to the rights of indigenous peoples. For example, the first SDG, no poverty. If we think about this topic, FPIC, so the free, prior, and informed consent of indigenous peoples, helps to protect the rights of indigenous peoples to land and resources, which in turn strengthens their economic security and contributes later to poverty reduction. For example, SDG 3, good health and well-being. Through FPIC, communities are involved in the decision-making process on the development of projects that may affect their health and well-being, for example, by considering potential negative impacts on public health. Another example is the SDG 10, so reduce inequalities. FPIC promotes the participation of indigenous peoples in decision-making processes and contributes therefore to reducing inequalities by listening to the voices of indigenous peoples and thus respecting their rights, particularly in relation to land use and natural resources. The last example, it's SDG 16, so peace, justice, and strong institutions. FPIC strengthens the rule of law and promotes peace by ensuring the protection of the rights of indigenous peoples and fostering dialogue and cooperation between governance, business, and communities. So finally, by considering FPIC, the Sustainable Development Goals can be achieved more effectively, I think, as they ensure that, for example, construction projects are implemented in line with the needs, priorities, and knowledge of affected indigenous peoples. And thereof, you can say that FPIC is an important instrument for promoting sustainable development in line with the SDGs. So in the end, that means that you can identify chances by considering FPIC. But back to this abbreviation of FPIC, what is it about? Let's take a deeper look on it now. Well, FPIC is part of the United Nations Declarations on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples from 2007. And this UN declaration is emphasizing the right of self-determination of indigenous peoples. That means that indigenous peoples should not be relocated from their lands or territories without they have given their free, prior, and informed consent. So in regard to FPIC, indigenous peoples should be respected and not relocated. But if they have to be relocated, project owners should consider the opinion and needs of the impacted indigenous peoples. And additionally, indigenous peoples get the right to negotiate the conditions if they have to be relocated. And in the end, the impacted indigenous peoples can decide whether they agree with the relocation and compensation, or if they disagree or agree with certain conditions. So here we see that the FPIC framework influences primary new project policies. Let's look on these four letters on the key elements of FPIC. So the first one, F, for free, it just means no coercion, intimidation, or manipulation, as well as that indigenous peoples get enough time to think about the deal and the offered compensation if they have to be relocated. The second one, prior, the consent is sought in advance and informed. Yeah, well, all relevant information relating to the activity are provided, and the information must be objective for sure, and it must be in the language of the indigenous peoples and in a culturally appropriate way, for example. And all information on matters affecting their rights, their lands, their traditions and culture must be revealed before the project starts, of course. And the consent, the last one, as I've already mentioned, I think indigenous peoples have agreed to the activity that is the subject of the consultation, and the FPIC allows indigenous peoples to provide or withdraw their consent. So all in all, I think the FPIC standard sounds very powerful and sophisticated. For sure, not every region is exposed to this risk respective to potential violation of indigenous people's rights. In the end, I think often it depends on the country and type of risk for what you're doing underwriting. But in regard to new insurance project policies, I can tell you that FPIC becomes a new popular ESG criterion. For example, the large insurance companies such as Allianz, Swiss Re, Axis Capital, and of course also Re as Hannover Re. We respect the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Thus, some insurance companies do not support new projects anymore when the FPIC of impacted indigenous peoples is not given. So yeah, it's a relatively new topic, but as I've mentioned, large insurance companies are already focusing on this topic, focusing on what kind of framework can you apply to really make sure that you do not violate human rights or the rights of indigenous peoples. Let's speak about the legal framework regarding FPIC. Well, FPIC is recognized in the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples from 2007 and also in the ILO Convention 169. These two frameworks, they highlight the importance of securing the consent of indigenous peoples before initiating projects that affect their lands of resources. And FPIC has been ratified by countries all over the world. Quite remarkable, I think. All states in Latin America have been ratified FPIC, which is showcasing the global significance, I think. Additionally, the right to FPIC is anchored in the national constitutions of some countries, providing a legal basis for its enforcement. For example, let's focus on Canada. Canada has integrated the principles of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples into its national legislation through the UNDRIP app. So therefore, this UNDRIP Act requires the government of Canada in consultation and cooperation with indigenous peoples to take all measures necessary to ensure the laws of Canada are consistent with this declaration of 2007. Thereof, this integration of FPIC into the UNDRIP Act underscores just the commitment to uphold the rights of indigenous peoples. And if we think about the link between FPIC and construction works, I think especially projects associated to hydropower plants, to dams, reservoirs, pipelines, and mining are particularly prone to violations of indigenous people's rights, because often this is because of the impact of these kind of projects on indigenous lands or on their resources, and impacting the ways of life of indigenous peoples or people who they live. For example, these projects often involve land exploration, displacement of indigenous communities, environmental degradation, loss of cultural heritage, and a lack of meaningful consultation or consent, which can result in a violation of indigenous people's rights to their right of self-determination about their land, about their natural resources, for example. Therefore, if insurers support these projects which violate human rights, or especially rights of indigenous peoples, insurance companies may face significant reputational risks. Thus, I think it is crucial to assess whether new projects have obtained the free, prior, and informed consent of affected indigenous peoples. So incorporating FPIC into underwriting decisions can mitigate potential conflicts and ensure ethical project developments, I think. So here you see considering FPIC can also be a kind of risk management regarding the reputation risk of an insurance company.
Louis, can you maybe make sure you finish in 2 minutes? I'm just conscious of time. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Harry, thanks for the information. So here we just see that the International Finance Corporation, World Bank, for example, they emphasize this topic as well. So they say these business sectors, project developers should focus on FPIC. But let's look again on the link between FPIC and underwriting. So first of all, I would like to mention the idea or suggestion of incorporating the question whether the FPIC of impacted indigenous peoples is given or not into the underwriting process, because it can be a crucial step to ensure that projects align with ethical standards and do not have adverse impacts on local communities. But unfortunately, as of every new topic, there are some challenges in regard to considering FPIC in underwriting. For example, there's currently a low transparency regarding whether FPIC is given or not, because unfortunately there does not exist so far comprehensive database where you can look up a specific project to check whether this project is FPIC compliant or not. However, I think ESG ratings of appropriate project companies or project operator can be used as a kind of proxy. And another challenge is that experience and best practice approaches of how to consider FPIC in underwriting are yet to be fully developed, because it's relatively new. But last important aspect, I would like to focus on the opportunities, because despite these challenges, you can identify opportunities. So first of all, very interesting, FPIC makes the big topic of human rights more measurable. And I think this is highly positive, because often social topics are quite subjective and difficult to measure. But now, thanks to the FPIC framework, this topic becomes less ambiguous. And another point, reputational risk, you can see considering FPIC as a kind of risk management as well. And last but not least, thinking more economical again, if indigenous peoples agree with a new project and give their consent, there will be peace. And this is key, I think. Thus, the insured, so the project operator, will probably have a more durable social license to operate. This aspect should be of high relevance and not be underestimated, because the social license to operate is key for a project, and thus for the demand of insurance coverage in the long run, right? And after the construction phase, we want to ensure the operation phase, but it is only possible if the underlying retain the social license to operate. And another big advantage of an insurance point of view is that many claims such as sabotage, malicious damage by indigenous peoples, as well as construction delays could probably be avoided if FPIC is given, because then there's peace. So what is the economic benefit? Of course, firstly, it increases the profitability of the insurance project policies. Secondly, it facilitates financing by banks. And thirdly, project companies should have an interest of their own in striving for obtaining the FPIC of impacted indigenous peoples. So finally, it may become a win-win situation for all three parties: indigenous peoples, project operators, and insurance companies. Thank you for your interest. For your interest, and sorry for running out of time.
No, it's a crucial topic. Thank you very much. So now we can leave the floor to Sylvain and Marie to talk about Grand Paris Express. So if you can share your screen, and the floor is yours.
Yes, with pleasure. I hope you hear us well.
Yes.
And see the screen?
Yes, it is all good. Yeah, thank you.
Perfect. So thank you very much, Isabelle, for your invitation. It's a pleasure to spend a few minutes with you Today, I have the pleasure to be with Marie here in Saint-Denis, near to Paris. I am Sylvian Pollet, the Deputy CFO of the Société des Grands Projets. We changed our name at the end of last year. We were the Société du Grand Paris, Société des Grands Projets. Now, I'm the guy who can share the big picture, and Marie is the girl who can share with you some interesting information. Just to give you the picture and to help you to understand what we are talking about, what is the Grand Paris Express. It's a new metro. We are in charge to build. It's in fact 4 new lines. You have this on the screen. Perhaps just to make you understand the subject, you know probably the metro in Paris. It was built from the center to the outside, just like a star. In fact, we are at the moment connecting all that line together to, in fact, help people to move in the Paris region. It's a big project, big investment for the government. It's, in fact, not 25 billion, but almost 35 or 40. And it's quite a big subject for the government in a situation of difficulties to invest. The government, the region, all the local authority would like to make a big move in the mobility in the region, and that we are trying to do at the moment. In fact, we are talking about 200 kilometers of new metro line. The metro at the moment, if you put every line together, it's at the moment 200 kilometers. So we are doubling the size of the metro. The metro will be fully automatic. It will be 90% underground because we are building in the France region. In fact, it's easy to build underground. It's 68 new stations, and we hope to help about 3 million passengers every day to move through the region. At the moment, there's about 100 kilometers of new line already dug. At the moment, there's about 10,000 people working every day on our construction site. And it's not true in the presentation. There's no 29 tunnel boring machine. In fact, at the moment, there's 0 tunnel boring machine because the 29 who dug before have finished our job. Some new tunnel machine will dig after the Olympics, and it will happen on the line 18 of the south. In fact, yesterday, and it's the last, but yesterday we have the pleasure to receive the Security Commission to visit the Gare Saint-Denis Pleyel, who will be the first station we deliver. And they say, if I understand well, that we did a good job, enough to open it in June for the Olympics. That station was conceived by Kengo Kuma, the architect. I hope you can visit the station. I think it's quite a nice one, perhaps my favorite. You have some picture of the construction site. You see the viaduct at the south. You can see the tunnel boring machine, the station of Noisy-Champs on the left, just to give you an idea. About 150 construction sites all over the Paris region. We hope to finish this in 2031, to be clear. We began the adventure in 2010, and I think that it will be possible to finish on time. With that, we have a lot of environmental or social question to manage, and I will tell you some few words about that. And we will be free to answer all your questions, of course.
Yes, thank you, Sylvain. So just to introduce myself, my name is Marie Bourdon, and I'm in a new position before. For the last 2 years, I was working on the environmental strategy of the Société du Grand Paris, which is now Société des Grands Projets. And I will tell you about that just after. So just to introduce the topic of environment, what you have to first understand is that the project in itself was thought and designed to answer to key challenges of the 21st century, the ones that you see here that are common to all big cities worldwide, basically. But some of them are directly linked to the question of the environmental transition that we need to operate. It's one right in the center, pollution and climate change. So it's in the core idea of the Grand Paris Express to be an answer to this problem. Now, the project brings benefits to help and support the environmental transition with 2 levers. The first one are the one that you see on the left. It's what the project will allow basically to develop sustainable cities, because one of the things we're trying to encourage is to build city on the city. We do not want the city to expand, which is a real challenge, because when you are building a new public transportation system that goes as far as you've seen on the map before, from the center of Paris, you have some area on the Grand Paris Express where there are basically not many people. And what we want to avoid or to limit, or at least to control, is the development of urban areas over non-urban areas. There has been a lot of studies done, not necessarily by us, but also by specialized companies and so on, to demonstrate that, in fact, the Grand Paris Express will allow more to build on what's already built than to build on non-urban areas. So that's a very positive point for us and for the project. Second lever is to allow, obviously that's the main goal of the project, is to promote active and decarbonized mobilities, not only by encouraging modal shift from car to metro, but also bicycle, tramway, buses, walk. Everything is obviously linked. And then the second leverage we have to make it a project in service to the environmental transition is in the way we are going to build it. And these are the 4 boxes that you see in the middle and on the right. So we have taken a lot of decisions during all the design process of the metro system to make it as environmental positive, if I can say like this, as possible. And I will focus on some of these decisions just after, so I will not spend too much time here. In terms of carbon emissions, at the very beginning of the project, we had to demonstrate the necessity of the benefit of the project, and also in terms of tons of CO2 that we would avoid by building the Grand Paris Express. So we have developed to do so a specific tool that is called Carb Optimum, and I will show you right after. In 2012, I think the first version was created. And this tool has come up with a conclusion that by 2050, the Grand Paris Express and all its effects, because it's not only the construction and the modal shift, it's also all the building on cities that I was mentioning just before, and it's written here as renovating neighborhoods around stations, but that's basically the same thing. All this will allow to avoid 14.2 million tons of CO2 equivalent by 2050. This is the most pessimistic hypothesis. We have studied 2 scenarios over 2 horizons of time, and this is the minimum that we will reach, basically. So now, just to explain to you what Carb Optimum is. So as I was saying, it's a life cycle tool, basically, which objective is to assess all environmental impacts and benefits of the Grand Paris Express. So it covers all the design and construction phase, including preliminary studies. So everything that we've issued in terms of CO2 emissions since 2010 until 2030, 30 or 31. And on the other side, we calculate also everything that will be issued in terms of emissions and avoided as well. So operations, obviously you emit CO2, mobility and territorial development, you avoid CO2. So all these parameters, this is what brings us to the conclusion of minus 14.2 million tons of CO2 equivalent. So this is a tool that we regularly update because you can imagine in 2012, we barely started anything. So we had to work on hypothesis. Most of the time, and I would say, I'm not sure I want to say 100% of the time, but must be quite close. These are not our own hypotheses as Société du Grand Paris or Société des Grands Projets. We rely on external sources and expertise because we want it to be reliable. So lots of hypotheses in 2012, in 2015, in 2016, we start digging. Now we are in 2024. There has been an update in 2018, and we are in the process of again updating it. This is important also because we want to track our carbon emissions to make sure that we are as positive as we thought we would be. So it is very important to update it regularly. So we have it at the global level of the whole network, and then we have it also line by line. So in terms of emission produced, we want to be as extensive as possible and to consider all possible sources of emissions. So during the construction phase, we obviously look at materials, cement and steel mainly, because these are the 2 main sources of CO2 emissions on the project. Energy consumption, of course, but also transportation of all the materials, equipment, and people who are working on our sites. And during the operation phase, same. We are as extensive as possible. Energy, but also things like management, marketing, or control. So for this, obviously, you take hypothesis, you take ratio, maintenance operation, and also the renewal needs of the equipment. In terms of CO2 emissions avoided, so these are the 2 levels that I was mentioning before. Modal shift, 34% of the benefit in terms of CO2 emissions avoided comes from modal shift. But we do not account only for people who leave their vehicle at home and move to public transportation. We also study the impact that this has on the remaining car population. For example, there will be less traffic, so you will use less fuel consumption, and so on and so on. The car wear will be slower, so the renewal of your car also will take longer, and so on. And in terms of urban densification around stations, so what we haven't said until now is that we also have under our perimeter the construction of over 100 real estate programs in the stations, around the stations. These will be new buildings, and the intent is to dynamize the neighborhood around the station. But also there will be demolition of ancient buildings and construction and renovation of the existing one, improved energy efficiency, and so on and so on and so on. So the message here is that we have a very long list of sources of CO2 and that we want to be as extensive as possible. And also one important thing is that we are fully transparent on our methodology. We are doing some reporting on this, and we are publishing a lot of information on our website, including in English, if you're interested. So this is just what we end up with the Carb Optimum model. Now this one is dated 2018, so it's a bit old now. This would have moved slightly to the right now, but you can see that here you have the emissions from the construction, then in purple you have the exploitation phase, and then you have all the benefits here, modal shift and urban densification that come here. Now in terms of environmental strategy, so of course since the very beginning of the project we implemented some strong actions, but we also decided that we wanted to go further in 2021. So a lot of work was already done or ongoing, but never too late. So we got the approval from our board to reinforce this strategy. So reinforce our actions on all the 4 pillars that you see on the screen, with a new one that is dedicated to CO2, and I'll come back to that. And 2 other pillars. The second one is to be accountable, because as soon as you are taking commitments, we are a public entity, so we want to be accountable and transparent. So we had to develop tools, for example, to follow our CO2 emission. We didn't have all the tools at the beginning, so we had to develop some. And third, develop our communication strategy. Like any other large infrastructure project, we are criticized. And of course, we hear and we try to answer as clearly as possible, but we realized that also we were doing a lot of positive things on the project, and that we did not communicate enough on that. So this was the 3 pillars really go together. So now to focus on carbon emissions reduction. So going back to Carb Optimum. On the construction phase, Carb Optimum tells us that we are issuing 4.4 million tons equivalent CO2 during the construction phase. The objective of the new environmental strategy is to reduce this by 25%, meaning we had to find ways to avoid 1.1 million tons of CO2, considering, as I was saying, that a lot of work was already going on. So a lot of things were in the past. So it wasn't so easy to find new sources of reduction. How did we do that? First, we looked at what is a carbon source of emission in what we do. Of course, it's concrete. Half of our emissions are due to concrete. So this was our first action. The second source of emission is steel. We also did some actions on steel. And the third one is transportation of excavated material. With those three, you basically have like 80 to 85% of all our, maybe even 90 of those 4.4 million tons equivalent CO2. So minus 25%. We have three pillars to develop. The one on the right, prepare the future and conclude partnerships. It's not going to impact directly on our reduction objectives, but the idea was, again, to consider that there are solutions everywhere, and we have to cooperate with as many people as we could. But the one in the center and on the left are the main ones. Encourage the use of low carbon materials and constructive methods. Obviously, this is the first thing we looked at. We tried to find ways to implement it in contracts that were already signed and to make them evolve to use less emissive materials in terms of concrete or steel. So we created what we call the reverse carbon initiative, which is basically a mechanism that allows us to finance decarbonation projects in our contracts, but with the innovation that we do not finance on the basis of what it costs, but we finance on the basis on how many tons of CO2 will be avoided. So we had to decide how much does a ton of CO2 cost. And that was not easy because there is not universal price of a ton of CO2. So we decided, and I think it's one of the highest reference that we found in 2021, it was 100 euro per ton of CO2. And this value increases year after year. This worked quite well. We had a few projects on concrete, obviously, and we had a good success with the rail of the project because we were able to convert all the steel used to produce the railways of all the lines to low carbon steel. It had additional cost, and the mechanism that we thought the reverse carbon initiative allowed to finance entirely the transition to low steel railways. So we were quite happy. There are a few ones that are not low carbon because they were already installed, but I think 80 to 90% of the rails of the Grand Paris Express will be low carbon. Second pillar, the one in the middle, innovation and experimentation. I will go directly to examples because that will be better. We had since the beginning of the project the conviction that we are so big that if a player like Société du Grand Paris doesn't take the risk, and I use brackets, you can't see me, but to test new constructive methods, new materials, who can do it? I mean, the risk for us is not that high. There are lots of processes when we experiment something that are developed. Of course, security is always our priority number one, but still there are a lot of things that can be tested on our work sites. And you have a few examples here. The one on the left is the ultra low carbon tunnel segments. It's entirely cement-free. So tunnel segment is what you see here. It basically what constitutes the tunnel. It's I don't know how to explain it differently. But basically, you install them one after the other, and you have the full circle of the tunnel. So first time worldwide that cement-free prefabricated segment was used in the metro tunnel section. The experimentation was brought up to us by the Société Vinci, who worked on the section 1 of line 18. And we worked with them, with all the other contractors that work on this section to to actually deploy this tunnel segment almost 2 years ago now. And there is a close monitoring following up, because obviously we want to see how it evolves in time. And there has been absolutely no problem on this project. The one that you see on the right is a bit more recent. The idea was to, so the hollow beams that you see here, usually they're full. And the project, I think it's again the company Vinci, yeah, same line 18, has brought up this project saying that we could avoid the use of a lot of material by 3D printing. You can see here it's 25% concrete that has been saved just by making those holes. And again, from a normative point of view and a security point of view, it has zero impact. Everything is completely safe. It's inside the European norms. There are no questions. But tradition meant that we always did full hollow beams. So maybe tomorrow we deploy this technology all over the station, and on one beam it doesn't make too much sense, not that much material, but at the level of one entire station, and considering we have 68 stations, when you do the calculation, it could be a lot of concrete and CO2 emissions that would have been avoided. And one thing I want to say about innovation also is that sometimes we test things on our work site that we will not have the opportunity to develop on a large scale on our own project, because again, a lot of things are already built. We're opening our first station next month. But even if it's not on Grand Paris Express, that it's deployed on a large scale, doesn't really matter actually if it serves for the other projects in France, Europe, worldwide, whatever. Okay, I see time is running. So maybe just this is one example of how we use excavated materials, because we have a lot of excavated materials to produce low carbon concrete as well. This works quite well with clay, and we have a lot of clay. So we have a lot of projects to reuse these clays. And the last one here is how to reuse excavated material to recreate a substrate that is after reinstalled on our work site. So the picture you have here is when we brought back the substrate after transformation, and now you can see that at least it looks alive. There is some life all around, so that's quite positive. And I will finish with excavating materials quickly. I think this figure might be slightly higher now, but approximately 47 million tons of excavated materials for the whole project that we will have to handle. This is the equivalent of 9,500 Olympic swimming pools. We have a lot of other comparisons. You can also consider that this is enough to lift up a whole Paris area by 20 centimeters. So that's a lot of material. We have an objective to recover 70% of this material and to have 15% removed either via rail or water transportation, because you can imagine that 47 million tons of material to transport by truck means a lot of truck on the Parisian area roads, which is already highly congested. So 3 principles: recovery, 70%, traceability. We know where every single gram of excavated material goes and for what. And removal method, train or water transportation, and I mentioned it. The figure 240 building sites, it's a year and a half old, I think. I don't have the latest one. We had at the time 91 recovery sites. Most of them are located in the Parisian area. Not all of them, not because we did not want to handle everything here, but just because the amount of excavated material is so high that the capacities in the Île-de-France region were not enough. So we had to go further. But the objective is to handle as much as possible locally, again, to avoid transportation as much as we can. And 2022 results. So we had excavated 28 million tons of material, so approximately half. At the time, where is the figure? 2022, we had reached 64% of recovery, which means that since the beginning of the project, we had above 50% of recovery compared to the 70% objective that we have. You can see that it's increasing year after year. It's against the case in 2023. So we are fully confident that we will reach the 70% recovery target by 2030. In terms of transportation, we are also on track, slightly above 15.5, mainly by water transportation, not so much by train, because the train network is quite congested as well. So it's difficult to find slots to evacuate our excavated materials, but by water transportation, it works quite well. And I'm done. I hope it wasn't too fast. And we can answer to your questions now.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. It was very enlightening. Yes, we have questions. I'll take the first one, or one of them. Was the cement-free concrete used in the tunnel segments compliant with the concrete Euro codes? And associated to this is what was the cement replaced by? If there was no cement, what did you put in?
It's done with, and I forgot the word in English now. It's a waste of the steel industry that is used to replace the cement.
Slags.
Yes, exactly. It was a long time ago, and I haven't followed the technical details of the experimentation, but I don't recall any problem of compliance with codes, norms, and so on. There has been files completed. I mean, testing for months that have been done by the company directly, and everything was proved compliant.
Yes, slag has been used in the construction industry for at least 20-30 years, because it's good combination with soil in terms of durability.
Yeah, the solution of slag is interesting. It's not the future, because the steel industry is also moving to greener production methods. But right now, this is one of the solutions we have to decarbonate.
Okay, we have another question on this hollow beam that you presented. Mm-hmm. So do you know if it was a load bearing or just for pedestrians? So is it a beam that is have structural, a big structural, or is it just for pedestrian?
Yeah, it's an inside bridge of the station, so pedestrian will walk over it. But it's really integrated inside the station. So I can't say more, actually, because I don't have the answer. But I'm not sure if it's structural or not.
Okay. Another question. We are doing as IMIA a conference in Spain in September. Do you believe and we are also collecting good practice to make like a handbook of good practice on ESG sustainability topics? Can we use the examples of Grand Paris Express on that book? And do you recommend any speaker that could be able to present research on those examples, or low carbon concrete especially, that we could have at our conference?
Yeah, of course, examples can be used. Maybe we'll have to review them before they are used externally, of course, and can find a speaker that won't be me, because that's not my job anymore. But some of my colleagues can totally do the same as I just did now.
Okay.
So if you can just drop us an email and I will forward to the appropriate person.
Okay, very good. I think I've done all the questions, but is there any other question that want to be asked?
Yes, there is. In the Q&A, Andy Kane wrote a question: Was the cement-free concrete used in the tunnel segments compliant with concrete Euro codes?
Yeah, I think this was answered.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand there is Euro codes, but you can also develop new products with the agreements of between the contractor and the principal, and also the norms to have a specific agreement for a specific use of a new material.
That's it.
But I had to go very quickly on all these experimentations, but you have people who are followed up on the more technical aspects. And if some of you are interested to understand in a more detailed way exactly the whole process and any issues that we may have encountered, we can get you in touch. No problem.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we are all on time. Thank you for all those presentations, and thank you for the feedback from the audience. And yeah, thank you for participating. I know it is lunchtime in Paris, so it's not easy, but it's a good way to have people from everywhere in the world. So that's thank you for that.
Thank you
very much. Thank you for your
Bye.
attention.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Are we closing, Stephanie?
Yes, I'll close now. Thank you.
Thank you very much.